Um, this is one of the sessions that we're doing that we're calling the Friday CE Conversations. And this one, the topic is on supporting small business owners during the COVID-19 restrictions. I'm Janet Steveley with Griffin-Hammis, and I also have with me today Michael Dalto, who is our kind of in-house public benefits expert with Griffin-Hammis, and also Dallas Yates, who's helping us with the technical parts of the webinar. And Michael and Dallas are also going to be helping with monitoring the chat box as we go through this. So like I said, I'm with Griffin-Hammis. I'm involved with several of the state self-employment projects, including the Entrepreneurship Bootcamp for Veterans with Disabilities and the Certified Business Technical Assistance Consultant, or what we call the CBTAC certification training. And I've been self-employed myself for a good number of years. So self-employment is something I'm really pretty interested in and excited about. Through these CE conversations on Fridays, we've been trying to share information and learn from each other about what's going on during the COVID-19 restrictions. And while we're starting to hear about, restrictions lifting, we all know that this could be going on for a while, or at least going in and out of this for a while. And all of us are having to learn to do our work differently during this. And one of the things that I'm learning is how to have a conversation with 100 people over the internet. So bear with me a little bit today, but we do want this to be conversational. But you are all muted, or at least I think you are. And so we're going to be using chat a lot, but we'll be pausing during the presentation to periodically hear what people are saying. So make sure you're being active in chatting on this. You may note too on our schedule that we're doing a session with a similar title, or actually it's the same title, on May 18th. That will probably be a little less conversational than this one, but it'll be more providing some information. And I wanted to note too that I know some of you who are on our CBTACs, the Certified Business Technical Assistance Consultants, and we are providing CEU credits that count towards your CBTAC recertification for the May 18th webinar, not for today. So let me just start by saying that at Griffin-Hammis, in general, the guidance we've been giving to people who are involved in customized employment, whether that's wage or self-employment, is that to the extent possible, we want to keep people moving forward during this, right? Or at least not have a hard stop on their journey to employment. Because, if it was you or I, and we're all in the same boat right now, we're trying to figure out how to keep our work and our livelihood going through all of this. And we want to make sure we're doing the same thing for the folks we're supporting. And having a little trouble advancing the slide. It worked a second ago. Oh, here we go. I see. That's the trick. Okay, so we recognize that everybody's in a different situation right now, that you might be working with customers that are self-employed who they might be dealing with different restrictions based on where they live, or different circumstances based on, their particular business and how their particular business is doing. Some businesses might be going gangbusters right now. If you're in the N95 mass production business, you're doing well. Or if you're in the toilet paper distributed business, you're doing well. Other businesses might have had little or no impact, but some might have experienced a serious drop in work or income, or a complete stop. So you may be also working with people who are in the business planning phase who haven't necessarily started yet. And this might be a terrific time for doing research, even if it may or may not be a great time for launching. So what we want to think about today is how to support business owners to adapt their business to current market needs, to use their downtime productively, to plan proactively for the future, and to access immediate income support. And we understand that for people whose businesses have stopped right now, that immediate income support might be the most critical need right now. But we also know that business owners are typically people who really care about their business, and they're artisans and they love doing what they do. So we didn't want to focus the whole session on income support. We really want to focus on how to get people, help people in getting their businesses going and growing their businesses during this time. So with that, some different ways that, or some different things that might come up as we think about this are, you know, working from home or from a different location, for health and safety concerns. It might be adding or adapting products or services, or adapting sales or marketing strategies. And again, some businesses that you work with might be doing really well right now, and kudos to them. And while they may not have, you know, as many concerns or issues, they might be doing fine, but it's still important to check in with them and offer support. Like for instance, I work with a man who runs an electric bike shop, and some of you who are CB Tax might remember Jerry, but you know, he had a pretty down 3 weeks and was getting pretty worried. But as soon as the weather changed here, you know, his business is doing great. You know, he's selling lots of bikes, he's getting a lot of bike repair business. So some people are
Janet, real quick, do you mind if I cut in for a second?
Sure. I'm getting a lot of feedback, so.
Yeah, people are saying in the chat, and I can corroborate that we're only able to see the title slide that you're displaying. We can't see your other slides that you've transitioned to. So you might have to close out of the PowerPoint and reshare it.
Okay, let's do that. Okay. We'll try that here. Slideshow. Okay, do you see it now?
No, I still just see the title slide. Other people are saying they see a black window.
Okay, let me go out again. Let me go all the way out. And okay, bear with me just a second here.
Yeah, you might have to stop sharing completely and then.
Okay, so stop sharing.
Okay, yeah.
You know what maybe I should do instead is share my desktop. Let's try that.
Yeah, that might work better.
Okay. And do you want to chat about anything while I'm doing this? Feel free. Here we go. Need 1 second. Okay, and I think we were right about here. Okay, so adapting businesses for current restrictions might involve a whole lot of things, and please know that I'm going to kick off some ideas with this, but really we want you all typing in the chat and sharing your ideas. And unfortunately, I can't see the chat, but Michael and Dallas can, and they'll be helping to support that. So one of the things that I thought might come up for different people is a change in where they're working from. You know, they might be working at home now, or they might be working from another location. And think about this, you know, a lot of wage employees are working at home kind of for the first time. Lots of us who are self-employed already work from home, so it might not be such a big issue, but some people are having to work from a different location, wherever that might be. And even for people who are working at home, they might have different needs. You know, they might have different equipment needs. They might, you know, need faster internet, things like that. That, you know, it's our role is to kind of support them and help them figure out what they need and how they might be able to get it. I work right now with a woman who's a piano performer, you know, and most of her work is done in assisted living facilities. And of course, that's not happening right now. So we're trying to help her think about, you know, ways that she might be able to provide music to her customers in a different sense. And of course, that might involve some different equipment and things like that. So thinking through things like technology or other things that people might need, and then really like resources for getting it as well. Like a few things that I thought about, and please type in your ideas here. But one thing is like for VR through post-employment services, they might be able to come back, even though somebody has closed successfully, they might be able to come back and provide some things that they need to keep their business going right now. And generally each state has some requirements on that. Like usually, people have to close within 12 months, and usually there's a dollar limit on it. I know in my state it's like $1,000, but that might be one thing to look at. People might also be receiving those economic impact payments, but they probably are. And they may or may not want to spend that money on that, but at least it is a resource. And for some people, and we'll talk about this a little later, unemployment insurance might be available that could provide some additional money. In some cases, people might be making more money on unemployment insurance than they were from working. So those are just some ideas I was thinking of if people are working from different locations and have different needs because of it. The other thing I think we can be helping people with is thinking through some of the logistics of working from home or another location. And I mean, when I work from home, and I'm working home a lot more now, right? There's just little things like if I get on a webinar like this with people, I got to make sure that both my phones are off, my landline and my cell phone, and think about other distractions, which in my case are the dryer because the laundry room is close by to the office, or that the cat's not going to be driving us crazy through the webinar, things like that. So helping people think through that kind of stuff would be great. And another thing I think we really need to be helping people with right now is thinking about health and safety issues. And again, this is going to look very different for different businesses, but thinking through things like distancing and contactlessness and sanitizing and barriers. And I think the one place we've probably all been in the last 6 weeks is the grocery store because it's about the only place open. But you think about it, things look really different now. You see the shields, which I think were a great idea. Eliminating the food bars. The last time I went to the grocery store, they had one-way traffic. So you went in one door and out the other door, wipes and hand washing stations. The other place that I've been myself that I see is I have gone through Dutch Brothers, our little local coffee drive-through place. And, they've changed up how they do business considerably. You can't use your own cups. They don't use the point cards. You can only use a credit card, and they hold the machine out the window and you swipe it. So things like that. So let me pause for a minute and just see if people are typing in the chat, if they have any thoughts about, working from home or other locations, or how to pay for things that people might need to do that, as well as any health and safety considerations.
Yes, Julia, we have a couple of comments so far. Janet. Julia says, my client is starting a new job today, and we talked about how starting his job remotely may actually help him in getting comfortable with his job and responsibilities. So he'd be able to focus on that rather than the logistics of coordinating transportation and hiring a caretaker to be with him at work.
Wow, so it sounds like for him, it's creating a little bit of ease, or a little bit of time to adjust to his job. Is this a wage job or a business?
Says it's a new job.
Okay.
And Fontella comments, curbside service at the grocery store also.
Yeah. Okay. Keep typing in your chat your thoughts as we go, but there's certainly, all businesses probably have ways that they're going to have to do things differently. So the more we can help people start thinking and planning for them, the better. I'll keep talking, but go ahead and stop me if there's more chats to share. So another thing we can be doing right now, I think, is helping people think about how they might adapt their products or services or add new products or services right now, and it might be based on, the current situation, or it just might be things that they've been wanting to add or do. So one thing I would encourage you to think about is to really help folks you're working with focus on what their customers might want or need right now. right? So like I've seen some really interesting examples. A friend of mine has a friend who owns a distillery, and the distillery started making hand sanitizer. And this is in New York, right? Where hand sanitizer, well, I guess it's needed everywhere right now, but New York has a big immediate need for that. Or, a small business that makes yoga wear had started making masks, for people. I work with a gal who's a housekeeper who at this time doesn't want to be going in other people's houses, and they probably don't want her in there anyway. But she's been pulling weeds for people. Right now it's spring, the weeds are going crazy. So she's been doing yard work and also picking up groceries for her customers, many of them who are older people who don't want to go out, right? I have a niece who started a business about a year ago. It's a mobile bar business. So it's a really cute little trailer that she takes around to different events and serves specialty cocktails. And of course, all events, got canceled in March, so all the weddings and events that she had planned just, they canceled. So what she started doing is she's starting to make simple syrups and sell them. She actually is selling them out in front of a wine store. So people that are going in to buy wine are seeing this. She just tried this for the first time the other day. She sold her first 60 bottles just in no time at all. So it was really pretty exciting. Lots of us who do training and things are having to do training much differently, obviously. Everything's flipping to online kind of stuff. And I know that lots of you who are supporting people with disabilities at work, be it wage or self-employment, are having to do things really differently, like virtual job coaching and things like that. So, but that's to think that, adding some different products or services or doing things differently might be good. I mean, we might find that things are things that we'll hold on to, even if we don't have to because of COVID. So I think too, it's causing people to be really, really creative. Like one of my favorite ones I saw was, I get, the Nextdoor app. It's a little neighborhood app that shares information. So a local restaurant put a little blip on there saying, hey, help us support our local hospital workers. And our small little hospital is the COVID hospital for our valley. And so they were asking neighbors to pitch in $10 to buy lunches to take to the hospital, these healthy lunches. It's like, well, who would say no to that, right? I mean, everybody in the community wants to support, they want to support the restaurant, but they also want to support the hospital workers. So I thought that was really, really clever of them.
Janet, we have a few comments in the chat.
Great, Sarah.
Yeah. Jennifer says, our nonprofit got a remote services day program plan approved by DDS. We're located in San Diego. So the employees are still able to work, and our participants can still either maintain their skills or learn new skills.
Awesome. And that's great that you got that approved so quickly too. I mean, I think people are being really responsive right now to help businesses, agencies get what they need.
And Claudia's responding to your comment about remote job support. Janet, she says, I also have a client who started a job 2 weeks ago and he's teleworking. I'm helping him to stay on top of a few key tasks to be done for his job by sending him a to-do task list with due dates. And I have set for myself check-in points with him to ensure he accomplishes the tasks on time.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really awesome, Claudia. And I think, a lot of us could use help with sort of keeping on task with things, right? And I don't know about you, but especially when this first started, I just couldn't get anything done for the first couple of weeks. I mean, I would try to work every day, but it was just hard. It's getting easier now. But so I think support in that kind of way, just helping people get through what they need to get through, is really important.
Mm-hmm. And we have more.
Okay.
Linda, who is apparently a kindred spirit to many Griffin-Hammis staff, says, still a good time for a specialty cocktail.
Yes. My niece is also doing these t-shirts, and she was asking me for, ideas about logos. And one of them, again, it's a bad time to stop drinking. So, yeah, specialty cocktails are good right now.
Fontella says, increase the amount of discussions and resources tools provided to job seekers to ensure they have access to technology to work remotely. Some of our job seekers need additional education to use and know what technology is the most beneficial. Want to ensure individualized services.
Yeah, you bet. And that certainly applies to small business owners too, that, people, they may not have the technology they need, but they also may not know how to use it if they had it. So again, that's really kind of thinking through with each small business owner what they need right now and what would really help them kind of keep going in their business. Like Bridget, the woman I mentioned, right now, I don't think she has the computer equipment to do the things that she could do if she wanted to go that direction, to put some music digitally that could be shared with her customers. So we need to keep really thinking about if people have the tools they need.
Great. Claudia says, I am also interested in hearing alternative solutions and business supports for small business owners that I can provide tips to a small business owner who has been severely impacted by COVID.
Mm-hmm. Can you share what his business is?
Well, while Claudia has a chance to respond, Kelly says, we're offering the same thing in Pennsylvania. I work for our state's DD agency, remote supports for supported employment, as well as community participation supports for day programming.
Okay, so people are doing a lot remotely, it sounds like. And I think our work with small business owners is going to have to be done remotely as well. Over the phone and over Skype or whatever that looks like for you, which might be, new to us too, right? We have to have the technology to do that, and we have to make sure that they have the technology to do that, or to use what they have available to them.
And Janet, Claudia got back to us about the small business owner who's been severely impacted by COVID and says he owns a piano business, sells, tunes, and repairs pianos.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm assuming if you're tuning a piano, you're going into people's homes to do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't really make sense for people to transport a piano in to get tuned, right? Because it gets untuned in the travel. So you can see where that would be difficult in terms of sales kind of stuff. Lots of businesses are kind of offering, by appointment only kind of thing, which kind of meets some of the health and safety restrictions. But I do recognize that some businesses may just, they may just have to stop for now, and we'll get to that, some other ideas for them in a second. But okay, so when we're thinking about adapting and adding products or services, we want to make sure too, we're helping people not just focus on immediate profit, although some income is probably nice, but really thinking about long-term return too, because, we want to help focus on what customers need, even though it might not make a lot of money right now. But think about what it does do, is that it creates goodwill. It might keep customers coming back to you or prevent them from going to other sources. Like I'll tell you, I ran out of makeup the other day, and they stopped selling the makeup I had. I could just order it online, right? Except they stopped selling it. So I was trying to order makeup, but I was trying to figure out what color. And then I ordered some and it was way too light. And then I ordered some more and it was way too dark. And this stuff's expensive, right? So I got really frustrated, and I just took and I had called too. I spent an hour on hold on the phone. And when I finally got through the representative, she said, well, we have a program that could tell you what the new color is now in the new product, but the computer's down. Can you call us back? And I said, really? I just waited on the phone for an hour. Could you call me back maybe when the computer comes back up? And she never did. So I took my little bottle of makeup. I went to the drugstore and as best I could matched it. And you know what? The match was pretty good, and the stuff cost half as much. I may not be going back to that initial business, you know. Another example that Beth Keaton, our executive director, was telling me is that she knows a hairdresser who's she's mixing up dye and delivering it to people and leaving it on their doorstep, right? So there's no contact. And of course, you know, customers need their hair colored right now, right? Because they can't get it. So, but think about if she didn't do that, what would happen, right? People might start going the same thing I did, going to the drugstore, buying hair dye, doing it themselves, and they might find like, you know, that worked pretty good. Maybe I don't need to be spending so much money going to the hairdresser to do this every, you know, 6 weeks or whatever. So really helping people think about that. It's not all about the immediate profit. It's about lots of things, you know, keeping your name out there, keeping in front of people, like niece Rachel with the simple syrups. I mean, she did okay. She's not making a ton of money, but it keeps her logo out there. It keeps something that she can be posting on social media. You know, so those are the kinds of things. Also thinking about collaboration with other businesses. You know, I was talking to some people who owned a balloon company who they've started doing packages, and they're collaborating with a bakery and a florist to do these deliveries where you get the cake and the balloons and the flowers delivered as a birthday price. So they're working with other businesses to kind of create new products and services. My niece, again, is working with a graphic designer that she worked with in the past, was reaching out, the graphic designer was reaching out to different businesses to ask them about making t-shirts. And the way she has it structured is the business decides on what the t-shirt will look like. She designs the graphics, and then the t-shirt company prints and makes the t-shirt. So the business owner gets the initial orders, and when they get enough orders, they do a run, and then they split. The t-shirts sell for like $25, and the business gets 10, and the graphic designer gets 5, and the t-shirt company gets 10. And again, it may not be making them a lot of money, but it will help, you know, and it will keep their name out there and active and going. So any thoughts about that one?
We do have some more
adapting
comments.
and adding products. Okay.
We do have some more comments, Janet. Actually, Andres sent an idea to Claudia, who's working with the man with the piano business, and said he can teleconference and assist the piano owner about how to tune the piano. They can use a tuner application app.
Wow, good idea.
Yeah. Linda says, we support a client who works at an ice cream shop, and they've allowed her to prep takeout cups by applying logos to containers from home. So if we can help businesses prep for busier times ahead, prepare supplies.
Ah, interesting. That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Susan says, do-it-yourself root touch-up kits from your stylist.
Yeah. We're needing those these days. I don't need them. I went natural.
And Fontella had said a little earlier, using more remote supports for job seekers who are comfortable receiving supports in that way. Yeah,
we're all going to have to be doing things a little differently too. Okay, so another thing we might need to think about is how we might adapt sales or marketing strategies. I mean, you know, I feel like we have this whole new vocabulary now, right? About, you know, social distancing or contactlessness or all these kinds of things that, you know, that we just didn't talk about before. So for some business owners, how they sell their products might have to look different, right? You know, maybe like the only using credit cards or only by appointment for some businesses. You know, maybe some businesses might have to consider online sales that didn't do that before. Or thinking about like business to business sales. If there's business owners that you know, maybe their products lend themselves to selling to other business. Like I'm thinking about Gretchen, who sells candied, like candied nuts, you know, candied almonds and pecans and things at fairs and events. Well, there probably aren't going to be many fairs and events this summer, but maybe packaging them and selling them to a grocery store, or selling them through the grocery store might be a way to consider that, or maybe Gretchen could take her nuts and hook up with the balloon people, right? And offer a healthier alternative to the cake and the cake packages, or, something like that. So that's something we really need to support people around. Any ideas about adapting sales or marketing strategies, or any examples that you've seen, either for people with disability, business owners with disabilities, or other businesses? Because I think we can learn a lot from everybody.
Nothing in the chat yet, Janet.
Okay, all right, we'll keep thinking on it. The one thing too, I think we can help people with, and it's Claudia, that like your guy who might, it's really hard to tune a piano while you're doing it, although I like the idea of supporting people with tuning it yourself. But some people are really just going to be where they're down, or have a lot of time right now until things, loosen up a little bit. And for those business owners, I think where we need to focus is on how to use time productively. I mean, I think all of us in our personal lives, probably, it's like, how are we going to use this time to do something, to get things done that we never have time to do, right? So like I tell you, I'm a business owner, and there's always a ton of stuff that I would like to get done, but I never get a chance to get to. And oops, am I doing this from the right side? There we go, full slide. Like for instance, like updating training materials, or cleaning up my office, and purging files, and shredding stuff. And I've for years said I'm going to switch from Quicken to QuickBooks, and I just never take the time to do it. Or I need to renew a certification. So if we can help people think about how to use the time productively. And I love what somebody said before about really providing a lot of support to help people maybe even make a list and check back in with them about, is it getting done? There's one business owner I've been working with who has not been very good about keeping up on financial tracking. And, I understand it gets, I don't do so well with it myself, so I shouldn't talk, but this might be a really good time for her to do that. Or things like updating websites, updating financial records, revisiting market plans. I think that would be a very good thing to work with on people. Maybe even helping people think about how to connect with customers and suppliers during this time, even if things are down. So just interrupt me if there's comments to share, or I'll keep going if not. Okay, so we can go on. So using time productively, and also planning for the future. And, nobody has a crystal ball. We don't really know yet what things are going to look like as restrictions are lifted. And if things are going to go back to like they were before, right? It probably will be different. So if we can kind of help people plan around what might be different in their particular type of business, I think that would be really, really helpful. Anybody have any thoughts on businesses that you're working with, on what might be different in the future and how we might need to plan for that?
Nothing new yet, Janet, except that Claudia thanks both you and Andres for your suggestions about the man with the piano business.
Okay, cool. Piano businesses. Okay, well, good. Well, good. We have more time than I thought then for addressing immediate income needs. So I'm gonna pass over to Michael Dalto to talk about. And I know this is a big issue for some. Well, for all of us, whether, for all of us in general, everybody's concerned about income, but I think small business owners in particular might right now be very concerned about income needs.
Great, thank you.
This is Michael.
Okay, actually, new comment just came in from Jennifer, who says, we're putting out a PPE policy for when we can see our participants again in person. Okay, good.
Awesome.
All right. Okay, so what happens when people's business has dried up or stopped completely? As Janet said, we need to look at addressing immediate income needs. And let's just go ahead and get right into the meat of it, Janet. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so some people you work with are either currently receiving SSI benefits or had received them and perhaps worked their way off them. Well, if a person's SSI was reduced due to earnings and now they have fewer earnings or no earnings, they can contact Social Security, get the SSI increased again. Also, there's a terrific work incentive for people who are earning enough to reduce their SSI to 0. It still enables them to keep SSI eligibility, which means they'll keep their Medicaid in the great majority of states that provide automatic Medicaid eligibility for anybody who gets SSI. And if the person's earnings later drop or stop, they can get SSI payments back just by calling Social Security. They don't have to reapply. So someone who's in that status, whose earnings had reduced their SSI to 0, can get their SSI payments back once their earnings have dropped or stopped. And I see a couple more comments. Andre says technology is a must in the future. And Chrissy says we have been trying to get into a virtual discovery process with most of the individuals at this time.
Mhm.
Thought you might want to respond to that, Janet.
Yeah, so for sure, in terms of the discovery process.
Yes.
Yeah. We have been doing, we've had some other webinars about doing discovery in a more virtual way. So yes, we feel the same way about people who are wage employed or self-employed, or people who are in the process of either developing, looking for jobs or developing businesses, is that we just want to support them in whatever way we can in keeping moving forward. Again, so there's just not a hard stop, and it's not going to be so hard to get people going again when they do, which for people who have had a hard stop, I mean, getting some income back right now is really important, right? They need some money to live on, but we also want to keep them thinking about work and going back to work. So.
Okay, then let's move on to the next slide, please. Okay. And nobody saw me just touch my face there a moment ago, right? Right.
No.
Okay. All right. There's another great work incentive in the SSI program called PASS, that stands for Plan to Achieve Self-Support. And this work incentive enables a person to choose a work goal, could be employment or self-employment, and helps them reach the goal by helping them pay for expenses they need to reach the goal, whether that's education, training, transportation, even buying vehicles, business startup costs, etc. And what PASS does is provide higher SSI payments than the person would otherwise receive. So in that way, by increasing the SSI, that offsets the expenses the person has to pay for to reach the goal. In many cases, dollar for dollar. So they spend $100 on expenses, they can get an extra $100 of SSI. Not in every case, but in many. And PASS is also helpful for people who ordinarily have too much income to qualify for SSI. They can actually use a PASS to become initially eligible for SSI. Let's say you work with somebody who's getting SSDI and they're getting too much to receive any SSI. Well, if they use a PASS, they can put most of their SSDI benefit into the PASS. They can use that SSDI to pay for expenses to reach their goal. And in return, Social Security will qualify them for SSI payments. So PASS is a great option for helping to start a business. Erica comments, getting back to discovery, we're learning that to do virtual discovery, people supported need ready access to technology. Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And potentially a PASS could help pay for needed technology. The other thing we just wanted to comment on, and with PASS, sometimes you have to have money other than SSI to put into a pass. But as Michael starts talking about unemployment insurance is money that could be put into a pass. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Janet. Then we have SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance, which is an all or nothing benefit. People either receive the full amount or it stops if it's been suspended or terminated, generally due to work. But there are some safety nets that apply to people who have worked their way off SSDI, whose SSDI payments have gone down to zero. If their earnings later drop low enough or stop, these work incentives, these safety nets, let people get their cash benefits back without having to reapply by contacting Social Security. Sometimes it just takes a phone call. Other times it takes some paperwork, but it's much quicker and easier than reapplying and starting all over again. Next slide. So for SSDI, I'll just mention this quickly. People go through a trial work period when generally they can earn as much as they want for 9 months and still keep that full SSDI benefit. And then after that, I won't go into the details, but there are those safety nets, those work incentives to get benefits back again fairly quickly and easily if earnings later drop low enough or the person stops work. Next slide. So the huge, there have been several federal laws that have passed in response to COVID-19. And the huge one, the one that costs over $2 trillion, is the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or CARES Act. And this provides several forms of economic support to people, not just people we serve, of course, but many, many millions of Americans in the form of economic impact payments, also known as stimulus payments, certain types of assistance to small business, certain loans, and at least portions of which can be forgivable, and additional unemployment benefits. The others, preserving jobs for American industry, assistance to state and local governments won't be as directly relevant to our work. But I did want to talk about unemployment insurance. The CARES Act makes some dramatic changes to unemployment benefits. Ordinarily, unemployment only applies if a person has been a wage employee rather than self-employed, if they have worked long enough, which usually means they've earned a certain amount over the last 5 quarters, and if they've been working full-time and they're pursuing full-time work again, then they can qualify for unemployment insurance. And it provides them partial replacement of lost wages if they're unemployed through no fault of their own. In most states, unemployment insurance benefits offset or replace about half of a person's after-tax earnings. So it won't give them the full amount of the wages they've lost, but maybe half of that. So those are the usual rules for unemployment insurance. But the CARES Act has made some dramatic changes. First off, it expands unemployment benefits to be eligible for people who are self-employed. That includes people with conventional businesses. It also includes private contractors. So these would be people who might not necessarily think of themselves as self-employed. They might work for maybe just a single employer, but they're not on the payroll. The employer is not taking taxes out of their pay. They get paid without paychecks. They're responsible for paying all their own taxes, including self-employment tax. So they're self-employed. Also, freelancers and even gig workers can qualify for unemployment benefits now. And People who have been working part-time can qualify. People who haven't worked long enough to meet the regular criteria for unemployment insurance all may be eligible for unemployment benefits under the CARES Act. And generally, they'll be able to receive a benefit which, compared to the earnings of many people we serve, will be much more than the wages or self-employment earnings people had when they were still working. Because in addition to getting generally at least half of the average unemployment insurance benefit in their state, people will also get an extra $600 a week on top of that through the end of July. And while many states are still upgrading their online unemployment benefit applications or file claim systems, once they're up and running and people have applied and been approved, these benefits can be retroactive, generally till back to the toward the end of March or early April. In order to qualify for that expanded benefit for the self-employed people and part-timers and people who might not ordinarily be eligible for unemployment, the person has to be unemployed, partially unemployed, or unable to or unavailable for work due to one of 10 specific criteria related to coronavirus. And just to summarize them kind of quickly, it means the worker has been diagnosed with COVID-19, or they're awaiting a medical diagnosis, they're caring for a family member who's been diagnosed, or another household member. They have to stay home to take care of their child or another family member who can't go to school, to daycare, or perhaps a day program. The head of household in their home has died as a result of COVID-19, and so the worker has become the primary support or the head of household by default. Person can't get to their employment because of the fact that the business is closed, or they're under quarantine, or a healthcare provider has advised them to self-quarantine. Also, people are even eligible if they had a job offer, but it was canceled due to the onset of the COVID-19 emergency. So even if they haven't yet started working, but they had a start date, and then it was canceled due to COVID-19, they could still qualify for this expanded unemployment benefit. Next slide, please. So the unemployment benefit, I'm going to talk just a little bit more about that before we switch to Medicaid. So there's the unemployment benefit for people who are not eligible for regular unemployment insurance. What about people who are eligible for regular unemployment insurance? Well, during the COVID-19 emergency, they can get the regular amount of unemployment they would have received under the regular rules, plus the extra $600 a week through the end of July. And then finally, people who were eligible for unemployment insurance, but who used up their allotment. In most states, the allotment is 26 weeks, that's 6 months. Some states it's fewer weeks, some states it's a little more. If a person used up their unemployment insurance before last July, then under the CARES Act, they can continue or resume unemployment benefits for up to 13 additional weeks, an extra 3 months. And they'd get the regular amount that they were receiving under unemployment insurance, plus that extra $600 a week through the end of July. So it's quite a helpful benefit, quite a helpful expansion of cash benefits for people who are unemployed or in some cases partially unemployed. Now, if a person gets unemployment benefits, particularly that high amount that's available through the end of July, how does that affect their Medicaid? I think most of you are familiar with Medicaid, an extremely important health benefit that not only covers ordinary medical expenses, but pays for employment supports for many, many people we work with, as well as residential and other kinds of supports that people rely on to live in the community. I would imagine that many, probably most of you, are serving people through agencies that bill Medicaid for your services. Now, what happens if a person starts getting unemployment benefits? Well, unemployment benefits are counted as unearned income. So they do count as income for Medicaid generally. And if a person gets high enough unearned income, that could cause them to go over the income limit for the form of Medicaid, the Medicaid eligibility group they're currently getting. But there's some good news. The CARES Act says that extra $600 a week benefit will not count as income for Medicaid. That means that less of that income will count, and people may be able to keep their income below the limit. Now, if somebody's income goes over the limit due to unemployment benefits, in spite of the extra $600 a week not counting, there may be other ways that people can qualify for Medicaid. There are lots of different ways to qualify for Medicaid or Medicaid eligibility groups. And one important one to know about is called a Medicaid buy-in program. These exist in 45 different states, and they're Medicaid eligibility groups specifically for people with disabilities who are working and meet certain other conditions. So oftentimes, if a person loses eligibility for the Medicaid group they're in now due to income, they could go to work even earning very minimal earnings, maybe something by way of a home-based business with very minimal earnings, and still qualify for Medicaid through that Medicaid buy-in program. Next slide.
I think that's back to me. So yes, so Social Security and unemployment insurance are two ways that we can help people get income coming in, fairly quick, especially if they've lost their Social Security and they can get started again, or if they qualify, which many small business owners will qualify now for unemployment insurance that didn't before. But the CARES Act also provides some specific assistance for small businesses. And the 4 programs are listed here. The 2 I really want to focus on are the economic injury disaster loans and the payroll protection program. And a couple of things I just wanted to point out about these is that while they're kind of called loans, there's a certain amount that is forgivable. So it's really more like a grant, right? That people don't have to pay back, and that these apply to the very smallest businesses. I work with lots of people who think that they don't qualify for these things because they're like me, like I don't have payroll. My business doesn't have payroll. I mean, I don't think of it like that. So when this first came out, I thought, well, I wouldn't qualify for that, but I can. It's really, it might look different, might not look like payroll, but whatever that person's net profit is from their business is their pay. That's there might be an employee of one in their business and not being the owner, but they still qualify. These last 2, I'll just say the small business debt relief is really deferment of loan payments for existing small business administration loans. And there's also a tax credit that doesn't provide immediate relief, but it might help some business owners, but note that they can't use the payroll protection program and get both. So we're really going to focus on these first 2 here. The economic injury disaster loans are through they're issued through the Small Business Administration, and they're for U.S. businesses with less than 500 employees. And I'm sure Most of the business owners you're working with have less than 500 employees. So they also have to be federally legal businesses, so probably no marijuana businesses, and they have to be in operation as of January 31st, 2020. So they are loans, but up to the first $10,000 of that loan is forgivable. So when the information first came out about this, it kind of made it sound like every business owner was going to get $10,000. Well, they had such a response to this that they clarified that a little and said, no, up to $10,000 based on $1,000 per employee. So if you're a single owner operator, you may at least be able to get $1,000 that's forgivable. Right now, when this first came out, there was just a huge response to it, right? And the funds were issued on a first come, first served basis. So the funds went very, very quickly. The application process was through the SBA. They just recently, just last week, Congress authorized additional funding for both of these programs. So another $60,000 or $60 billion just went into this. But when I tried to look yesterday, it didn't look like they were even taking new applications online, that they had so many people lined up from the first round that they're just taking people, out of the queue. But that doesn't mean you might not be working with people who already have these, or that more funding might be available soon. So be watching that.
Janet, could I just interrupt you a moment? Andres asked, where can a small business owner get access to this information?
The Small Business Administration website has a lot of information. I'm trying to figure small business development centers. Like I early on sat in on a webinar that was done by my local small business development center. If you Google any of these, you're going to get a lot of information. This is a link that can get you to the application, but like I say, right now it says we're kind of on hold, but you could be watching for this. Because again, even like, one of the gals I work with that's self-employed, we talked about this early on, and it's a very simple application process, and she got her $1,000 the other day as a forgivable, but she just gets a $1,000 check, which helps. She's kind of sitting at home right now because her business isn't very operational, but she's taking classes and she's doing some things that she has to spend money on, so it's helping. The other big one I want to talk about is the Payroll Protection Program, which again, eligibility, it's based on fewer than 500 employees, but does include sole proprietors, independent contractors. It can be a person of one. So don't think that just because it's a very small business and they don't think of themselves as being on payroll, that they don't qualify. Applicants can qualify for up to 2.5 times their monthly payroll amount. And so I know that sounds kind of weird when you're not used to thinking yourself as being on payroll, but how it's defined is you're looking at the wages, commissions, income, or net earnings from self-employment up to $100,000 per each employee per year. So those of you who have taken our courses in self-employment know that net earnings from self-employment is basically a little less than your business net profit, right? So you have business income, and then you have your business expenses. And after you subtract your expenses, you get to your net profit, and your net earnings from self-employment is a little bit less than that. It's multiplied by 0.9235, your net profit. So if I can say, this is my average monthly income from my business, I can qualify for 2.5 times that amount. And if I spend that in the first 8 weeks, if I spend that on payroll and certain other things, payroll benefits, mortgage interest, rent, and utilities, it can be forgivable. So it's basically giving you money to pay yourself for the first couple of months to help keep you in business, right? And you can qualify for larger amounts in that the terms are excellent. First, you don't have to pay any of it back for 6 months. And when you do have to start paying it back, it's only 1% interest rate. Now on the EIDL one, it's like 3.75. And there's longer terms on that one. They're up to 30 years. But this one, it's 1% interest rate. So I think it's something that people should really be looking at, especially if they're not going the unemployment insurance route. So when this rolled out, it again, it went really quickly. They put like almost $350 billion into this, and within 2 weeks, the money was gone because it's first come, first serve. So the new legislation that was passed last week that's putting another $310 billion into this program is now targeting it to smaller community banks and credit unions, because what happened is when this first rolled out, it was kind of like the big businesses got all the money. And you might have heard about, like Shake Shack giving back the $10 million they got, because it was really meant for small businesses and not for these big corporations. So this time around, like 60 billion of that is earmarked for small credit unions and small community banks who really support those very small businesses. And we want to make sure that there's not disparity in access to capital, and that minority owned and women owned businesses are getting access to that money. So if people are in need of some income relief, I would really look into this one right now.
Janet, there's a question here. Claudia asks, Janet, did you say they can get payroll protection program for up to 2.5 times their monthly payroll amounts, wages, commission, or net earnings from self-employment for each employee per year?
Yes, up to it's capped at 100. If you have employees that make over $100,000, then they cap it at $100,000. But yeah, so let's just say somebody has a small business and they make $24,000 a month in net profit, right? So they make like $2,000 a month. So 2,000 times 2.5 is $5,000, right? So they could request a loan. It's called a loan, but if in that first 2 months they spend it on those things, payroll and those other things I mentioned, the bank will forgive it and they don't have to pay it back. Now the payroll protection program is you go through your bank. You don't go through the SBA like you do on the other one. So it's your local bank. And what I found out early on is that banks tend to want to serve their own customers first. So I would go to the bank that the person keeps their business account at and use their process. It'll probably go much quicker.
Janet, could I add a quick comment here?
Sure.
Yeah. So when people are deciding whether to get economic injury disaster loans or payroll protection paycheck protection program loans, or go the unemployment route, generally, if the small business owner and any employees they have earn less than about $35,000 a year wages or net earnings from self-employment, they would probably have more money getting unemployment benefits through the end of July than they would if the business took out one of these loans and provided regular payroll to the person. Although these loans can also pay for rent, utilities, and mortgage interest. So a person may want to use it for that, even if they're not using it for payroll.
Very good point, Michael. Because really this is helping people for a couple of months, whereas unemployment insurance might cover, what was it, April, May, June, July, at least 4 months, right? So it kind of stretches it out, and they may get more funding too, to help. So I know we're over here. So just the one thing I just wanted to mention, if you are supporting people in applying for these, particularly the payroll protection program, and this was advice from my CPA about this, is to really understand when their 8-week forgiveness period starts and ends. He had said to set up a separate bank account if possible, but a lot of banks are discouraging that. They just don't want the extra work right now. But either way, to make sure that you're tracking on some sort of register or Excel spreadsheet, you know, what the person is spending the money on. And like, I would have people like write themselves a check for their pay for that month so that it's really easy to track when it's time at the end of the 8 weeks that you're going in and asking for forgiveness, that it's laid out well what you spent the money on, so that money will be forgiven. I know we're over time. We're glad to stay if you have questions or want to chat, but I do know that people have to get off too. So thank you for joining us. I've included my email and Michael's email if you have any questions too. So thank you. And we have some more CE Conversation Fridays and other webinars coming up. So be sure to check our website because we're adding things all the time. Thanks for joining today.
And Janet, we will be providing the PowerPoint to
Yes.
participants, right? Yep. That was one
Yes.
question. Great.
Okay. Any other questions or chats?
We're just getting a lot of thank yous.
Hey,
Okay.
thank you all. Thank you for what you do every day.
Thank you.
I'm going to sign out of this. I'll go ahead and close this down here. Are you guys still there?
Great webinar, Janet and Michael. This is Kat.